Hi, it's Eric Miller here again, and today we brought in a very special guest to talk about a very important subject. Dr. Slappy Green is here to talk about the consequences of kissing two girls with mononucleosis, the little-known stereonucleosis. Doctor, it's great to have you here today. Oh, no, sorry, actually it's just me again, Eric Miller. Oh, flaming crap on a stick. Well, anyway, since you're here, I've been seeing a lot of emails and messages and stuff centered around your inability to understand the difference between a Walther P1 and a Walther P38. Also, the fact that you're a jerky, jerkhead, jerkface. Could you explain to the internet why you're so stupid? Well, I'm afraid I can't explain that, Eric, but I can talk a bit about the Walther P1 and how it differs from the Walther P38. Oh, good, because I was afraid you weren't going to be able to find a subject to talk at length about. So, let's start with the P38. From whence did it spring? The P38 was designed for the German military to replace the Luger P08. Now, as awesome as the Luger was, it had some issues. But, so in 1938, the German military adopted this radical new pistol design from Walther. And without going on too much about it, from 1940 through 1945, Walther, Mauser, and Spreewerke all produced the Pistola 38 or P38. Oh, I'm sorry. And where did the P1 come from again? Yeah, I'm getting there. Okay, so after the war, the West German army is putting itself back together, and in 1957 they adopt the P38, and this is where it starts to get a little fuzzy for some people. All the guns that were initially manufactured for the Bundeswehr the following year in 1958 were labeled P38. Then in 1963, the markings were all changed to P1. Why is this? I've researched it, and I don't know. I suspect someone decided that they needed to make a clean break with the past. Maybe we're starting over with Pistol 1, or on paper it could have been the P1 the whole time. Either way, it totally does not matter, because a pistol that served with the Bundeswehr labeled P38 is the exception rather than the rule, because it was just that first batch of pistols that was labeled that way. Colloquially, they can be referred to as P1. Yeah, I've heard there are a lot of different, scams and myths surrounding this gun. Could you tell us the differences between all these different models? Okay, well, it's very easy to break this down into three basic categories. Wartime models were labeled P38 and had steel frames. Post-war commercial models were also labeled P38 but had aluminum frames. Post-war military models also had aluminum frames but were instead labeled P1. So, why all the fuss? Well, because there are a number of exceptions to these rules, and like the one I just mentioned about the first batch of P1s being labeled P38. And the internet attracts people who love to talk about how smart they are by pointing out that somebody left out some ridiculously inconsequential detail about something. Yeah, like you crack-smoking butt monkey. You're clearly putting your own ignorance on display by omitting the steel frame P38s that were made in France right after the war. That's right, I did, because they just made like a few of them. So apart from that, steel frames are wartime, aluminum frames are post-war. Oh yeah, Mr. Smarty Pants? Well, what about that rare aluminum-framed wartime model I saw for sale online? They said it was brought home by some GI who had helped capture the factory. Weapons-grade bolonium. Aluminum frames are strictly post-war. Yeah, and what about the rare short-barreled P38s that were issued only to Luftwaffe pilots? Pure poppycock, sir. The real short-barreled version, the P38K, only came into being in 1973, and even then, they're still fairly rare. But it had a steel frame and everything. Well, yeah, all you have to do is take a wartime model with a steel frame, cut the barrel down, and then weld a front sight onto the slide right here. Ta-da! There's one born every minute. Oh yeah? Well, take a look at your beloved P1 there. It has a BW marked on it, right? Yep, it's right here on the frame, right after the serial number. Well, I heard the BW means that was an army training pistol and that it was made with inferior materials. I'm surprised it hasn't blown up in your face already. Oh, Oh yeah, that's a good one. You don't happen to know what BW stands for, do you? Bratwurst? Bundeswehr, which is the West German military. Why don't you pull your anus down further over your ears, moron? Hey, but I swear I saw a military P38 that did not have a BW on it though. That's because they didn't start marking them with BW until 1963 when they started labeling the guns P1. I mean, do you see how many little exceptions and nitpicky things we could get into here? YouTube is mainly a short format medium, and in my videos I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter and avoid running off into every little rabbit hole I come across, like I'm doing right now. So what if someone theoretically wanted to buy one of these pistols, even though you own one? Well, that's almost a good question, Eric, thanks. Because that there are so many little exceptions and things about these pistols, you need to be really careful when you're buying one. So it's a 2010 right now, and I'm going to give you some really ballparky numbers. So if you're gonna spend more than say $400 or $500 on a post-war model, or let's say $700 to $800 on a wartime model, you'd better do your homework and know for sure why that gun is worth more than that. So what gun would you buy? Well, it all depends on what you want, Eric. Let's say you want a cool piece of history. A wartime model is pretty sweet, and for the most part you can still take them out and shoot them. If you want a shooter, just to shoot, like I did, you get a P1, like mine, that has all the upgrades on it. It's got a fatter slide to prevent breakages. You can tell the fatter slide because these little serrations here on the slide go forward of the safety. The skinnier, older model slides stop right here behind the safety. And it also has a beefed up safety, which I talked about in one of my other videos. And the important one is the hex bolt, which is right here, or the hex nut, rather. This reinforces the frame to prevent it from cracking, and the commercial ones won't have any of these upgrades. I heard that hex bolt is a phony piece of junk and doesn't actually do anything. Well, I've heard that too, and I'm convinced it's incorrect. And if you want to research the matter, or anything about P38s, I highly recommend that you go to P38forum.com right here. Or here. If you really want to learn, that's where you should go. If you want to argue about stupid stuff, go to a Pokemon forum or something. Okay, Eric. I think that's all the time we have for today, and now we can both go back to pretending that the other one doesn't exist. Sounds great to me, Eric. Hi, Eric Miller again. Quick postscript. I'm going to run down a quick list of all the most common myths surrounding the wartime production model guns. Now, none of these guns existed during wartime. Anything that you may see now was done post-war, I guarantee it, 1000%. Okay. There were no German-marked unit guns, there were no short-barreled guns, there were no long-barreled guns, there were no Gestapo guns, there were no plated guns, there were no SA-marked guns, there were no SS-marked guns, there were no Death's Head-marked guns, there were no engraved guns, and there were no presentation guns. There were also no such things as railway guns. Did you get that? If not, check out P38forum.com.